And we are live. Welcome back to the third pre-session for the Own Your Future Challenge. And today I have the privilege to talk to my dear friend Ryan Rigterink, which in Dutch sounds probably much easier to pronounce than in the US. But welcome, Ryan.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and I'm really looking forward to just spend this 30-minute plus on introducing actually the challenge that starts on Monday, Own Your Future. And I'm looking forward to have your feedback, your reflection on the previous challenges we did. And like what I did yesterday and the day before when I spoke to Benj and Shane, um, I'll also add some content to just frame what we're going to talk about. Because most people, when they think of ownership, of course they understand that it's like taking responsibility yourself and being informed yourself, but I believe there's much more, and there is this inner growth part of it that is not just a mindset about what I think, but also how I think and why I think about that. So but before we go into that, I just thought, like, what I just want to know actually what triggered you to come back to multiple challenges over the past year and a half.
We're never done, right? It's this is innovation and pushing forward into the future. I mean, it's a continual pursuit that deserves revisiting, right? It's I think there's a lot of value every time I go through your challenges. There's new layers, there's new unfolding, there's new clarity, new chapters, and so it's always exciting to not only hear nuggets of things I've heard before, but also the new and to see kind of what that brings to the surface. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard a friend who joined many challenges. Well, you know him, Raymond. He also said, like, the first time I just probably only grabbed the first part, or maybe like just the first lesson, and by going over and over it, he said I also learned a total new vocabulary about how to talk about the future. And first of all, I thought, is it such a thing? And then actually yesterday we talked about it. It's all about finding new language to not keep on repeating what we have done, we have seen, but it's about the new language. And if the new language is not only spoken, but it's also gets top of mind, and that just needs repetition. And it's
Yeah, the
probably with neuroscience, we can talk ages about it, but
yeah
it,
the popular phrase "worlds" or "words create worlds." It's there's a lot of truth to it.
yeah. So and for those that watch online live or in the replay, just leave your comments. Try to answer them right away if we see them pop up in our broadcasting app, and else I will definitely react to it. So, Ryan, what was the biggest gain or benefit you experienced when you did your first challenge?
Wow, it's a great question. I wouldn't pick out any one moment or anything like that. What really stood out to me, I kind of felt like it was a gym, like a gym for my intuition skills to be built up, to have a framework. So kind of you provided not only the space to do the exercise, to gain the strength, but the exercises to really hone and build those skills. And that was the biggest thing for me initially. Obviously, the result of that was a lot of clarity and things that were in me, and having that come out. I mean, that was kind of the direct benefit. But just the thing that stood out to me was, is this like yeah, it's just the picture I got just a couple minutes ago. It's like an intuition, a future leaning intuition workout gym. So,
Yeah,
um,
I like that
it,
one. Yeah, it gives me a picture with, like, we talk a lot about you have to create space mentally, physically, and physically, of course, that we have to give it priority. things we find important, we have to give it priority. And in this case, it's about the future. But in general, leading yourself, you need to give priority to develop your leadership set, and leading yourself into the future. It's just another form. And definitely, I think with this intuition, like this space for a workout with your intuition. Yeah, I love that picture. And it's the same with actually with the gym. I'm not a huge fan of the gym, and it has nothing to do with just the pain it always creates. It's just like I love to go outdoors. um and I get distracted when I'm outdoors as well, because just like my mind wanders off when I see a bird fly, and then I forget that I was going out for a bike ride. But without going deeper in that one, in the gym, it is the repetition that builds the strength, and it's the pushing and finding the limits to actually make you go further and develop yourself. And we could say that our imagination, and we talk about the eyes of the heart and where it physically happens in our body. Well, actually, I don't know. Um, but most of it, I think, is in part of our brain. So some talk about left and right side of the brain. What I know is that when I push the limits of my imagination, I will have some kind of muscle pain afterwards, called headache. And I have to fuel my brain by drinking loads of water. So it's definitely a gym. Yeah, I like that one. I like that one. Yeah, well, what you just said, and I've prepared some content based of our chat we had over the week. And is that actually I want to refer a little bit to this connection with what we talked about yesterday about body, soul, and spirit and the wholeness. And and I just want to take us through that step by step. What the I would nearly say like what our default is versus what could be our next default, but just give that expression of what we have been doing through the last couple of challenges and what actually needed repetition. So I just make you small in the picture so that people can see the whiteboard. And so what I think that our current default state is in most settings, and I'm not saying that it's the natural way or the organic way. I tend actually to believe it's not, but it's our default way. Is that actually how we experience things, how we got triggered by things? There's a lot going from the outside in, which for me is a bit like, just take an example, and I use the same Venn diagram I used yesterday. So if you want to know more about these three circles, then I suggest watch the replay of yesterday as well. And but our body, our physical state is actually most times triggered by just a physical event. Something happens, circumstances. The reaction of it is actually that when we let it come in, we have a new experience. I call this our intelligence, our headspace, where we actually start to balance between the rational thoughts and the emotional thoughts. And this is where most of the times everything stays. And well, when a live event really triggers us, the next step is actually that we start to adapt what we believe. So I call this our spirit space, and the intersection between the soul and the spirit. I believe it's the heart. It's where we have our memories, but it's also where our emotional intelligence sits or takes a seat. And these in these three areas, we generally see that actually it's the physical that triggers the outside world. We get a new experience, we discover new things, we learn new things, we maybe got upset, emotional, frustrated, or just happy, and then we adapt our beliefs, which is not a bad thing, because actually when we have little kids, this is how they learn the most, because by just watching what's happening on the outside, everything comes in and they develop it. But it could also be that when we interpretate the live event different than it was, and we got the wrong message, then we got the wrong emotional state, and we actually start to adjust our belief system in the wrong direction. And then we end up that we need psychological help. Also, there are professionals for it. So I'm not going to right or wrong. When we take it one step further, and actually that's for me essentially when we talk about the future perspective and leadership and owning ourselves, it should come from the inside out, which is literally the other direction, the other sequence, which is like it starts with my source of life, my inner voice, my future identity. We talked about it in the first session last Wednesday. And this is where actually in my spirit, I start to have new beliefs. I start to have hope. I start to have faith for new kind of things that didn't happen or I didn't experience. They're just new things. This is the start actually of most creative thoughts, innovation. But what if this would be the default? That means that if we have, for instance, we start to foresee what is going to happen, we have to align our emotions. So instead of being surprised on the left side by a physical event and try to rationalize it to not be influenced, we start on the other side. We have the emotion of anticipation, and actually we start to anticipate for what we have foresight for. And by that, when it happens, we recognize it and embrace it instead of rationalize it, which is a very nice way of saying dumping the fault and the input. This way, it is not about the physical event, but actually it will be the demonstration for what we have believed for. And this is how spiritual intelligence actually overflows in emotional intelligence. And by that, in at the end, in understanding what happened, because we see the tangible results. And it's not that like, oh, like flip the switch, we go from outside in to inside out. Now, probably it is learning to juggle with them and knowing which one when to use and when to take and when to listen to your inner voice instead of the external voices. Can't go much deeper in it in this session, also because we have a whole challenge to fill and exercise these kind of things. So I'll just leave it actually with this one and just ask Ryan, what does this bring back any memory or does it trigger any new thought that you developed over the last period in between the challenges or maybe one
Yeah,
of our conversations we have once a month?
I was gonna say it actually ties into some of the conversations that we've had, even around education and how, when you're saying how one is really well developed and the other is not, I think some of that might tie into kind of some of the types of learning that are emphasized or not emphasized. Um, the other thing that elevated when you were sharing that is the developmental aspects, right? So the the early years, that first process being more of a predominant theme of how things are upgraded. But then, as just as a father of four, that natural process where it becomes, it's no longer somebody else's belief, but it becomes my belief, and there's kind of a transfer of ownership and an emergence of kind
Yeah.
of that identity that's really self-driven, so the self owned, if you will, that really leads into that second side, the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, and actually the paradox is it that in the age that kids learn the most by just watching their parents, their caretakers, it's their main input for learning, but those are also the years when they are the most intuitive, and actually intuitive thinking is the main thing they develop. So they're actually, to use that word spirit, they are like a free spirit in everything they do. Everything is intuitive, everything is gut feeling based, everything is based on nothing is impossible. That it's also the years that, so it's a paradox, because the moment that free spirit got contained, and we talked many times about that in the context of educational systems, that it should be much more experience based, where we learn the other things, but not at the expense of losing this intuitive free spirit we have. So it could be that we lose it actually a little bit, the default, and we shift from in at the age of 6 or 7, we shift to more to the left side, where we start to depend on the triggers from the outside. I've got kids 14, 16, and currently, like, sometimes it's when they go to school, it's just they have to survive. It's just like managing the outward coming events in such a way that they are whining less. And that's how we try to beat the system. But before we know it, the system starts to dictate us. And as pioneers, innovators, leaders, creatives, futurists, that's just like, no, we simply can't afford that. Because then it's like, yeah, we all go the same direction. But what if the cliff is at the other side of the path? Someone has to turn the direction. Yeah.
And what about the huge intrinsic value of each of those individuals that's kind of lost in that process? Like, to me, that's the other part of it. Is it's, I think, dehumanizing in some ways. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. When you say intrinsic value, I think also of intrinsic motivation. I think of inner voice. Those are those aspects that really sets us as humans apart from anything else that breathes.
yeah.
And if we use it for the good, then we have creative solutions. And I strongly believe creativity always should lead to solutions, even when it's in the artistic expression, because then there is a message, there is a some transfer on the emotional side for the soul. Like when I go to a museum and I enjoy art, it's food for my soul.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just chocolate, it's also art. That's food for my soul. Yeah, well, one of the things that I also feel like, but there is something more. When we talk about, I mean, if we're doing it in the challenges many times, I always push people into chaos and help them to find some order in it. But chaos is that place where actually the building blocks, the ingredients are for something new. And if we are honest, then currently a lot of our peers, I don't know if in general, but a lot of our peers face so much pressure by the chaos. And actually, there's only one answer: go back to the inside out mode, find your inner voice, get back on track with your intrinsic motivation, start believing in your intrinsic value, find your outside voice, find your adding of value, and bring back to focus, because chaos is actually the place where the opportunities are hidden. So we have to do some hide and seek to find
Well,
those things.
and I think that's, we're talking about one being emphasized and sort of when those things are strong and when they kind of diminish over time. And I think you're highlighting the resistance that most adults have to going into like choosing to go into chaos for the benefits that come out of it. And that's one of the things I love about the challenge is it provides a safe place to do that and a structure to really facilitate it, because I think otherwise it's uncomfortable and uncertain. And so eliminating some of those factors and providing a process, I think
Yeah,
that's kind of the workout gym part of it. So
that's true. Yeah, absolutely. Like if you if you shift, and we talked about that Wednesday, Bench mentioned it, and he said that actually it was the switch to start looking at the future and actually start looking at today from the future instead of, and I added to that, instead of always looking to the to-do list from yesterday, because that makes us looking backwards and moving backwards into the future. But what if we just do the 180-degree focus turn? But that means that we start to watch what is uncomfortable, unsecure, unpredictable, not the nicest words, but when it happens in safety, it's the learning zone. It is the growth place.
It is, and I have to say that in addition to those uncomfortable words and adjectives, there's the flip side of that, which is the results of what you experience on the other side, which is it is way more rewarding and meaningful and motivating to live from the future and draw that into the present. So the it's a momentary experience to shift into something that's much better. So
Yeah, and if you do it too much, you get addicted to it. But that's probably the same as the gym. I've never entered that stage with the gym, by the way. So, well, but the other thing that I just wanted to add, and it is actually the least tangible one, is that actually when we go from spirit to, so we update our beliefs, we get new beliefs, and we go then by aligning our emotions. And I gave the example, if I have foresight, so things I start to become aware of that are not yet here, and I put my emotions to it, then actually I have this future or stance towards the future that I'm open to embrace it when the emerging future demonstrates it. And one of the questions actually always comes around is like, but how do I get to the future? Well, by actually doing nothing, because time is the only constant. And so the future will come to you. The question is, am I ready to receive the future? Or am I so busy that actually the future is a disruptive thing and I could easily like dismiss it, and by that missing opportunities? And that's just, yeah, in my world, that's just a waste. Missing opportunities. Like, you could just hurt yourself when you find out later. So, but I believe there is something beyond the emerging future. And when we talk about the overflow from spiritual intelligence, I can't help it to also talk about that. So I just make you small again, but I will get you back. So I just go back to the whiteboard. And when we talk about this inside out perspective, so I'm not repeating the whole model, but then there was one missing overlay, and that was actually the spiritual intelligence. And one of the aspects is, I believe, what we have faith for. So that's actually some kind of the active part where we take action to start developing strategies. And actually self-discipline flows out of that. But faith is one of them. And yesterday I already mentioned that actually every time I tend to say, do I write down here, this is where my will is, because my will chooses to partner with faith or with foresight, or is it just faith? So I will probably be struggling the whole challenge with that. And but that's it. Like, this is a simplified model, but just to make it explainable and talk about it, it's not saying that we are this simplistically created. Um, the next step actually is that, and that's what I really believe, it's where it really becomes interesting, and that happens in chaos. It's when, based on my new beliefs, things start to manifest that have never been around. And it's hard to explain in common language, but it feels like I believe it, I focus on it, and then it happens, talking about it, even before my emotions were aligned. This is like where we have like a game changer. We talk about it in business settings about disruption and game changers. I think the disruption was the one we talked about, and this is the game changer. Because when something manifests from the future that wasn't yet here, so it's totally new and born out of the future, out of chaos, it could be that our emotional state is completely out of sync. And I'm not saying this happens a lot. I think the other one happens much more because the other one is more like the emerging future. And this is more like what's beyond the novelty future. It's what Dave Snowden calls this in his Welsh named model. Um, this is actually very interesting because this means that if we fully go on our intuition and we develop fully our spiritual gifts, the talents we have for foresight, giving perspective, having the ability to share wisdom in the right way, um, bring solutions, create solutions, then we also enter in this state. And we tend to say, Lan, when this happens, this was a miracle. No one has seen this coming. Exactly. So let's call it miracle territorium because we were not anticipating for it, but it fits our belief system. It's important just to know that there's always a next step, a growth step. When this happens, we could see that the way our um, spirit, spiritual intelligence, our emotional intelligence, and our intellectual intelligence start to work together. We have what we call a sound mind. And a sound mind, if we go all the way back to the foundations of our language and we start looking at Greek language, it actually means that we have a clear, solid understanding that we can even put into words. And yesterday I said that means that there is an understanding and a way to verbalize our rational, emotional, and spiritual thinking all together, which was the foundation of actually finding out what our authentic voices. And if we find that, we start to become more true to ourselves, which is all about the future identity. Go deeper into that one, definitely multiple times during the challenge, layer by layer. And like Ryan said, probably we need to talk many times about it to grasp at least a bit the structure of it. That brings me like, you maybe wonder by now, what does it have to do with owning your future? Well, owning your future definitely has to do with your responsibilities, your finance, but also with your mental state, your mental health, and your intellect and your intelligence has to do something with the intellect. It has to do with the emotions. It has to do with your spirit. If they start to work together in the right sequence, we start to focus on the future, anticipate on the future, and embrace the future. While if we don't have them working together, we are just tossed around by external events, which for me is just simply not satisfying. So that's what got me into the space of focusing on the future and focusing on developing my talents to have more foresight and start to help other people by helping them to give their perspective a boost. So own your future is all about learning to lead from a future mindset. And a future mindset is that place where you say it's a way of living with purpose and passion to pursue who I can become. But a mental health, a holistic mental health, where IQ, SQ, and EQ work hand in hand, know each their role, is definitely one of the foundational pillars. Because at the end, it is all about finding the way to live actually a purposeful life amidst chaos. I could talk about this forever, but I think it will be good before I just give an overview of the the program for next week, just give you the space, Ryan, to say something magic.
Well, I don't know if it'll be magical, but I would just say if you have not, even if you have or have not, just jump in. Like, don't. I would just say whoever this video is going to go out to, jump in. You may not have a slot currently to kind of put this, and that's okay. I didn't really know what I was getting into, but you won't regret it. So just don't overthink it. Don't dismiss it. Jump in. It'll be life changing.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and just like to be mindful of the time, I just have just a few slides that just at the end of to just give you the program in highlights, and afterwards we will connect when we are offline. But I just want to thank you, and looking forward to run another challenge together and find out what the future has new for us in store. So
I'm looking forward to it as well. I
yeah.
appreciate it.
And so just the program, and I make it small again. It sounds, it feels horrible, but it's how the tool works. So what are we going to do? It's a 5-day challenge, and this is the third day of the pre-session. So you can watch the pre-sessions. They are available in the reserved space where we run the challenge, but they are also available on LinkedIn and YouTube, where you maybe have watched it. It's a 5-day challenge, which means we meet every day for about an hour, which is the core of the lesson, and then we have 30 minutes for those that got hold of the VIP pass, where we just have the live interaction and the Q&A session. It starts Central European time, 7 p.m. It's an hour earlier in the UK. That's just after noon, 1 p.m. on the East Coast and 10 a.m. on the West Coast. So every day, Monday to Friday, we start with just in the session. If there are questions about the previous session, which includes homework, it has a core element in it, because talking about it and having feedback and interaction with your peers is definitely going to make the difference. Every day there will be a new topic added, and with new interdependabilities with the previous topics. So I'm not giving you upfront an agenda, but it will be about leadership, ownership, the different types of intelligence, how to navigate amidst chaos. Um, those elements will definitely be in, and every day we have an assignment, because it's not just knowledge transfer. I want you to have an experience where you will discover and explore things for yourself, which will be meaningful for you and will accelerate you to keep doing this forward looking, future oriented lifestyle. So the assignment, it's free. How to do them? It's actually a bit like I put you with a question in chaos, and when you start using your creative tools, you will find an answer, and by that you will have a discovery, or you explore some new aspects. A key element, and that goes all the way back to the sound mind, is that you start to find language. So I ask every participant to make a video recording explaining the breakthrough, the understanding, the exploration of the assignment. By uploading that one to the private Facebook group, you will have immediately feedback, reactions from other participants, and you will be a source of inspiration for them. So it's part of the peer-to-peer experience. Then, well, these are now over, but there was a session Wednesday and yesterday. We also will have a session after the challenge, which is actually a session based on like, okay, now I know why I need to own my future, and I have a understanding of what are the parts of it, but why? How does this fit in the age to come? Well, that's what I want to do on the Monday after the challenge, just after a week of reflection and hopefully some refreshing time with friends and families. outside Future Perspectives. So if you want to join, and like Ryan said, just jump in, just go for it. It's at no cost. It's not free because it asks your dedication to yourself, your accountability to yourself, and you taking up responsibility to really own the future. So it's money wise, it's at no cost. Live sessions can be watched through the closed Facebook group. That means also there will be the replays, the place for the videos, the questions can be asked there, the online interaction will happen there. But for this challenge, I also give away, again at no cost, VIP passes, which means you will be invited in the Zoom session, which means you have live engagement and live interaction with the other peers and with me, your host. And after the formal session of an hour, there will be another 30 minutes to just ask questions. That part will not be broadcasted, so to keep the safe place as safe as possible. So the passes are available. Maybe you wonder how to get the pass. Well, actually, when you sign up through, where was that one? Here it is. If you sign up for the challenge and you see the link below, then you'll get an email with the timetable and all the details. And also in that email is this button, claim your VIP pass. Just claim that one, fill in your name and email address again, and the second email will follow, and you will have the VIP pass with the Zoom link to just be part of the live experience. That's actually it. There's not much more to say than just jump on board, give yourself permission because you deserve it. You will do me and others an enormous favor if you join the challenge, but you will have the most benefits. It will ignite something, it will refresh something, it will break off something, but most of all, it will just give you a grip and a focus of who you are and what is actually yours to keep. Your future perspective, your future leadership, your ownership, your responsibility. All those things you cannot give out of control. You can't put it to someone else. Many aspects we tend to do so because we were simply not informed or not conscious enough about it. But in general, we will regret when we give away responsibility and ownership. So it's at your in your literally in your interest to own your future. Did I miss anything, Ryan?
I think you nailed it. Looking forward to diving in again, and looking really forward to just to highlight one thing you mentioned, which is the community aspect of it is really helpful to start getting feedback immediately. I know for me, I was a little nervous to do it. I think most people are, but again, real value to push through and do that. So
Yeah. Yeah. For some people, it's actually the first time they make a recording, a video recording of their own thoughts and input, which is confrontational. But everyone that did it came back actually with the same thing. Like that was the breakthrough. It became meaningful and memorable the moment I heard myself say things that deep inside I totally agree with, but I didn't know before. And that's, yeah, that's the whole game. Find the right language, change the conversation to create the future. Thank you for your time, Ryan.
thanks for having me. Look forward to it.
Yes, and let's rock and roll next week.
Sounds great.
And everyone who watched, just use the link thefuturechallenge.com to sign up, get your seat for the Own Your Future Challenge. Thanks for watching the replays. Thanks for being with us live, and see you soon.